The Washington Wizards are exactly the type of team you don't really want to be in the NBA. Like later today, we're about to watch a team who did it completely right, and they'll reap the benefits for it. The San Antonio Spurs are about to land like a generational player who, personally, I believe he is going to break the mold of the NBA, particularly how we look at players at that size. And it didn't just come with luck. The trade last year of their then best player, DeJounte Murray, pushed them into this much needed direction, which ultimately resulted in them purposefully sucking, strategically sucking, which ultimately resulted in them landing Victor Wembanyama. And yeah, I've seen DeJounte plainly take credit on Twitter for wanting out of San Antonio, but ultimately I think the Spurs would have been smart enough to realize that's run its course and they had to make that move. DeJounte's last year with the Spurs, he really took a significant leap, averaged nearly a triple-double. Like, his numbers are pretty insane to look at, 2 steals a night. But with him being there, it kept them in the mix of this directionless, no man's land zone, which is literally the worst place to be in all of sports. Not bad enough to land one of those generational, life-changing pieces, which historically you need to be to land the Tim Duncans, LeBrons, Hakeem, Shaqs, Kareems, etc. And damn sure not good enough to contend. Literally in the mix of mediocrity, which to me is the worst place to be in sports, but most definitely basketball, where there's 10 players on the court at once and you need at least one of the top 2 to really contend. In 2022, the Spurs won 34 games, and with them being bad but not completely at the bottom bad, they got the 9th pick. These are the last 10 9th picks of the last decade. The best one has been Andre Drummond. That's normally what a relatively low pick given the circumstances lands you, and when they went all in on the inevitable rebuild, look at what it landed them. 3 first-round picks and a swap for a really good player. DeJounte Murray can be a 3rd option, possibly a 2nd option to a generational talent, but to me, he will never be that guy on a championship team, so keeping him literally was the definition of insanity. Not only did you trade him and afford you assets for your future and a clear direction, it resulted in you getting the best prospect, what they're calling the best prospect, possibly in sports history. That's what embracing a clear direction does for your organization. I say all this just for a quick comparison of the Spurs and what their future looks like starting tonight, and my hometown team, the Washington Wizards, and what their future looks like or really doesn't look like going forward. In the span of like 3 days, Bradley Beal got traded for a package that's very disgusting when you look at it and you give the context behind it. Kyle Kuzma opted out of his contract where we don't know exactly what he's going to do, and Kristaps Porzingis, off his best season, got traded for a very underwhelming package. I like Tyus Jones. Obviously, he's like the best backup point guard in the league, but it feels like they already have 2 to 3 Tyus Jones on that team already. And I don't even know if he's going to play one game. He might be used as leverage to flip for an asset or possibly a 1st-round pick. We don't know. But still, the players you're flipping and the return you're getting, it just looks embarrassing. Now, I know it's not Will Dawkins, the new GM's fault. It's actually a lot of Tom Shepard's fault. The previous GM, Will Dawkins, the new GM, he was under OKC with Sam Presti building what they have nowadays. So I'm not blaming him per se. It's more so the organization and how they let themselves get here. Last year, off a down year for Bradley Beal, where he didn't even play half the games, they were basically backed into a corner and forced to give him a 5-year, $251 million contract with a no trade clause. Why did that contract cripple that organization so much? One, he's overpaid. Like, I'm not disrespecting Bradley Beal. He's a very good player, a very talented player, possibly can help out the Phoenix Suns a lot, especially if they're able to flip DeAndre Ayton and get role players, in my opinion. But he's overpaid, and that made him a very hard trade. So now, unlike the well-run San Antonio Spurs, who's reaping the benefits trading DeJounte Murray, a younger DeJounte Murray, off his best year way earlier in his contract, you had to move Bradley Beal for anything just to embrace a 4-year late direction. That's insane. Bradley Beal should have been out the door the moment Russ left. He had his best season of his career with Russ, led the league in scoring, and that was the perfect timing to trade him. After Russell Westbrook got traded, Bradley Beal had literally 1 year left on his deal, with the following year being a player option, which he ultimately opted out of and got that 5-year, $251 million bag with a no trade clause. The Wizards and Tommy Shepard specifically not trading him off his peak year and basically bringing him back on an expiring contract essentially forced them to overpay him so you won't lose him for nothing, which in essence you still did. It's not Bradley Beal's fault, but he really got the best of both worlds. Got his bag, got paid, played one little silly year with Washington where he put up great efficiencies, got to pick and flex his no trade clause with his new destination, and really didn't do you any favors because you got no real compensation for a player of that magnitude. So now for Will Dawkins and the new crew trying to clean up the old crew's mess, you're completely starting a rebuild from scratch. You don't have those first round assets like at all because you didn't leverage your star players correctly like OKC did, Houston, even Brooklyn to some extent. You don't have that young, untouchable, promising piece. In my opinion, everybody should be expendable. And you really should be hoping Kyle Kuzma comes back on a big deal where he can average like 25 points for half a season, the phoniest 25 points a game, and you can move him and really get back possibly some assets. That's really your only hope, because if you don't, you lost all three of your best players in a 4-day span for really nothing. Again, I compare San Antonio because 2 years ago, they were in a very comparable situation. Star player off his best year on a contract where in his last 2 years, they won 34 games and they won 33 games. That afforded them the 12th pick and the 9th pick. That's not good enough. Their last 2 years with Bradley Beal, they won 35 games and 35 games. That landed them the 10th pick, and this year the 8th pick. They've had the 9th pick for 2 of the last 5 drafts. Again, it's not good enough. I didn't even bring up the players you continuously lose that go on to be essential pieces to competent teams. You lose Rui Hachimura, your 9th pick like 3 years ago, basically for nothing, and he looks like a completely different player on a competent team. You trade KCP for Will Barton and Monte Morris, and Monte Morris is a productive player, but Will Barton and KCP were basically on the exact same contract, and Will Barton got bought out this year while KCP was a heavy contributor to a championship team. And now you trade Kristaps Porzingis off his best year, and you don't even get any of the first round picks, losing 2 20-point per game scorers in a 3-4 day span and not getting a single first round pick while you're trying to rebuild. It's like the craziest fleece any organization could possibly have. I'm sorry. This is what happens when you're loyal to the soil to a player you shouldn't have been that loyal to begin with. Like, I like Bradley Beal, talented player, but damn, did he take you to the finals or something? I never understood that type of loyalty. And when he left, he didn't flex his trade clause and say, okay, let me make sure they get something for me, a first round pick, a promising young piece that could be untouchable. Nothing. He did it for him. He was looking out for his best interest. And now you're stuck with a rebuild where you don't really have any real compensation to look forward to. Tough. I hate to say this about my hometown team, but for like the last 4-5 years, it feels like they've just been that spot, that stop spot where you play, get your bag, put up empty calorie numbers to help you negotiate your next deal with your preferred next team, and then you leave. Like, it's been nothing to help them. It's everything to help the players. They're a friendly ass organization. If you guys like this video, I'm gonna talk about the trade from the Marcus Smart and Memphis angle and Boston's, but I wanted to talk about my hometown team. Like, I'm not a fan of them, but I still root for them passively, and they continuously get fleeced and finessed, and it's just disgusting to watch, bro. It really is. Follow my social media sites, turn on post notifications, like the video if you like the video, do all that great stuff, guys, and until next time, as always, stay tuned.